My name is Melanie Carter. At 16, I knew one thing for certain. In my parents' eyes, I was the backup plan. My family lived in a small town in Oregon where every house had a chimney, a white picket fence, and a front lawn trimmed like it was ready for a home and garden magazine. To outsiders, we looked like the perfect middle-class family. My dad, Alan Carter, was a credit officer at a local bank, and my mom, Rachel, taught high school English. But that stability was just surface level. Inside that house was a hierarchy I never qualified to climb. I had a younger sister named Claire, 2 years younger than me, with soft blonde curls, a bright smile, and the kind of charm that made adults melt with just a glance. To my parents, Claire was a living Christmas card, adorable, accomplished, and worth investing in. And me? I was the shadow, the kid who got good grades but was expected to figure it out, the one who earned a half-hearted "that's great" while they were already focused on the next conversation. I still remember Christmas mornings vividly, Claire unwrapping flashy gifts, a new Polaroid camera, a set of high-end makeup brushes, wireless earbuds, and me, I'd get a notebook, a clearance rack sweater, or a gift card with a sticky note. Pick something you like. Once I asked my mom why the difference was so obvious. She smiled and said, "You don't need as much. Claire needs encouragement to shine." Those words stuck with me like a smudged pen line on paper, impossible to erase. At school, I worked hard and joined every club related to science, math, and business, but not once did my parents come to see my presentations or exhibitions. Meanwhile, Claire only had to build a baking soda volcano, and both parents would take the day off to cheer her on. "Melanie, art is just a hobby, not a career," my dad once said when I got accepted into a summer design camp on a scholarship I earned myself. I used to think maybe I was imagining it, that I was being too sensitive, but one day, standing by the stairs, I overheard my mom talking to my dad in the kitchen. "Claire's the one with real potential. Melanie's too closed off, too stubborn. You just can't expect much." I stood frozen, letting the cold truth of that sentence sink into every bone in my body. From that day forward, I stopped waiting. I didn't wait to be picked up, didn't wait for anyone to ask how my day was. I learned to walk to the library alone, cook my own dinners, and remind myself through scribbled notes in my journal, "Don't wait for validation, prove it to yourself." The only people who truly saw me were my grandmother Margaret and my economics teacher, Miss Turner, but they lived on the edges of my world. Grandma was too frail, and Miss Turner's support ended with the school bell. In my house, the unspoken law had long been established. Claire was the future. I was the one who figured things out alone. But from that quiet injustice, something unshakable began to grow. If no one believed I was worth investing in, I'd make them see it, not by shouting, but by achieving something they couldn't ignore. I got into Columbia University when I was 17. So did Claire. I remember clearly the day the acceptance letters arrived. Two thick envelopes, identical on the outside, but the way they were received couldn't have been more different. I opened mine with shaking hands, reading and rereading the first few lines until the words blurred. "Congratulations, Melanie Carter." I screamed in the kitchen, unable to hide my excitement. "I got in!" I announced, hoping for even a flicker of pride. Dad looked up from his phone. "Really? Claire applied there too." Right then, Claire walked in holding her envelope, and before she could even open it, Mom pulled her into a tight hug. "I knew it! You're the family's brightest hope!" she beamed, eyes glistening. I stood beside them, still holding my acceptance letter, as if it were just a side note. When I said, "I got into Columbia too, business management program," Mom replied flatly, "Good to know." No hug, no celebratory lemonade, not even a nod of approval. The moment Claire read the word scholarship in her letter, Dad pulled her to the table. "We need to plan. Columbia isn't cheap." I sat down and, mustering all my courage, said, "I'd like to talk about how I'll cover tuition too." Dad paused. His eyes weren't angry or cold, just empty. Mom set her spoon down and said a sentence I still can't forget. Melanie, we only have enough for one of you. Claire fits that environment better. You're stronger, more independent. You've always managed, haven't you? I thought I'd misheard. I asked again, voice nearly cracking. You mean there's no support for me? Dad nodded. We're not financially flexible. Claire has the potential to make a big impact. You're capable, but your future isn't as clear. Investing in Claire is the safer bet. Safer bet? I said nothing more. I quietly left the table, went upstairs, locked my door, and let the ache rise like a storm surge. I had grown up swallowing anger, tucking away disappointment, stepping aside for Claire at every turn. But this time, I couldn't swallow it. Not when everything I had worked for, a 4 GPA, a state-level business award, 2 years working in a bakery, was brushed aside. That night, I heard the sound of clinking glasses downstairs. Music, laughter. They popped champagne for Claire. No one knocked on my door. I opened my laptop, searched for scholarships, and typed again and again. Columbia plus, need-based plus, emergency plus first generation. One sentence looped in my mind. If they won't bet on me, I'll invest in myself. 3 days later, while washing dishes in the morning, Mom handed me a folder. These are some loan forms. There's also a brochure from the local community college. If Columbia doesn't work out, this might be more reasonable. I dried my hands, took the folder, and calmly set it in the sink. I'm going to Columbia, I said, my voice steady and ice cold. And I won't need a single dollar from this family. Mom looked stunned. Maybe for the first time, she saw me not as compliant or quiet, but firm. Melanie, don't be stubborn. This isn't stubbornness, this is clarity. I finally understand my place in this house. That night, I emailed my former college counselor, Mr. Jackson, who once encouraged me to join the summer startup competition. He replied within 20 minutes, setting up a meeting for Monday. The next day, I submitted 11 private scholarship applications, 4 supplemental financial aid forms, and created a detailed 4-year budget plan. Every time I typed in the tuition amount, I didn't feel fear, I felt fire, rushing through my fingertips. The next morning, I took the earliest bus to Grandma Martha's house, the only person in the family who had ever seen me as an individual, not Claire's shadow. Her small wooden home on the outskirts of Eugene had a weathered blue porch roof, the faint smell of apple pie in the air, and bookshelves packed with worn novels. It was the one place I never had to perform to be seen. She was watering plants when I arrived. As soon as she saw me, without a single question, she opened her arms and held me tight. They've hurt you again, haven't they? She whispered into my ear. No blame, no need for details. She just understood, like always. That evening, I told her everything. The acceptance letter, Dad's cold words, Claire is the safer investment. She was silent for a long time before resting her hand on mine. Her gaze was calm but razor sharp. Melanie, she said, just because they don't believe in you doesn't mean you're unworthy. You have to go. Even if it means working 3 jobs, even if it means eating dry bread for a month, go. Show the world they were wrong. I nodded. Not for comfort, but because I knew she was right. Over the next 2 months, I turned her living room into my personal survival headquarters. I compiled scholarship lists, filled out dozens of aid forms, wrote letters to local foundations, even reached out to alumni associations. I knew I had little time. The fall term at Bradley West would begin at the end of August. Eventually, I secured 3 small scholarships totaling more than $4,500. Not enough for the full first year, but enough to place a deposit and confirm enrollment. The rest came from federal student aid and a private loan co-signed by Grandma Martha. I rented a small room in an old house nearly an hour from campus by bus. 3 other students lived there, each juggling jobs with no time for parties. My room was tiny, with a cracked ceiling and a leaky window during rain, but to me, it was a beginning. I landed a job at a coffee bakery near the bus stop, working the early shift from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. After class, I worked part-time at a used bookstore downtown, where the owner, Mrs. June, let me read for free when it was quiet. My course load was packed: 4 economics classes, 1 in data analysis, and a Thursday night startup seminar. I carried cold lunches in a tote bag, studied on the bus, and replayed lectures while washing mugs. I didn't have a single spare minute to be tired. But I kept a 4 GPA all year, not because I was smarter, but because I had no other choice. Professor Mendez, who taught strategic thinking, noticed me after I presented an idea using consumer behavior data to predict profit trends for small shops. After class, he asked me to stay behind. "Have you ever run a business before?" he asked. I smiled. No. "But I've had to calculate every dollar to survive a month." He nodded. "Then you're in the right place." From that day on, I was invited to join his advanced research group alongside 3 upperclassmen. At first, they treated me like the girl with 2 jobs, but after a month, they began seeking my input before submitting reports. Around that time, Claire posted a photo online, posing in front of the university's main building, holding a pricey latte. The caption read, "Every day at Bradley is a chance to shine." Hundreds of likes followed, along with praises from friends, my mother, and extended family. Didn't hit the heart button. I didn't feel jealous. I just turned off my screen, poured a glass of cold tap water, and returned to revising the financial plan for my semester project. Sophomore year hit with a rhythm I had no choice but to master: classes, jobs, and more classes. My bank account never crossed $200, but I held something no one could withdraw: sheer will. Every cent was tracked in my notebook. Essential coffee, $3.25. Laundry detergent, $6. Skipped chocolate bar, saved $1.79. I calculated I needed at least $824 a month just to survive, and I had to make that happen, no matter what. Financial pressure pushed me to think like an entrepreneur. One late night while helping the bookstore owner balance her books, it hit me. So many local businesses had either no online presence or poorly built, outdated websites. What if I offered to build something simple for them, for a small fee? I created my first site using a free template, then walked to every nearby bakery, salon, and yoga studio, knocking on doors and leaving business cards I'd printed at the library. Within 3 weeks, I had my first 3 clients: a French bakery, a car repair shop, and a second-hand bookstore. I called my service Northlight Studio. A modest name, but professional enough. I redesigned logos, built Facebook pages, and taught owners how to post updates. Some paid in cash, others in trade, pastries, oil changes, or rare books. I accepted all forms of payment. Professor Mendez, the same one who once asked about my business experience, began to notice the change. After class one day, he approached me. "Melanie, you should consider scaling this. There's an annual competition, Western Collegiate Business Innovation Challenge. I want you to represent the department." I froze. It was a regional contest with a $50,000 startup grant. Nominees were usually honors students with glowing recommendations and polished pitches for real investors. "I've never pitched to anyone beyond my study group," I admitted. "Then it's time you start." For the next 3 months, I juggled jobs, school, and competition prep. I reworked financial models, sketched out marketing strategies, and built an expansion plan targeting smaller towns that couldn't afford big agencies. On pitch day, I wore a borrowed white blouse from the bookstore owner, old slacks from Goodwill, and a dab of Claire's perfume she had left behind during her visit. I stood in front of 5 judges, all seasoned investors, clicker trembling in my hand, but eyes locked on the screen. I spoke about the French bakery, how I helped them increase foot traffic through $15 a week Facebook ads. I described my 3rd client, who had never used email before but now processed online orders thanks to a simple system I set up. When I finished, the room went quiet for 2 seconds. Then one judge, Angela Leng, the CEO of a media firm, nodded. "You have a grounded model, clear profit trajectory, and most importantly, drive rooted in lived experience. I respect that." 3 weeks later, an email arrived. Northlight Studio had won first place. I was awarded a symbolic check for $50,000 and a 1-year mentorship from top experts in digital marketing. From that moment, everything accelerated. The school newsletter ran a feature on me. Northlight's studio got a shout out in the local paper. I received an email from a prominent San Francisco consulting firm, Brenner & Co., inviting me to interview. They said they heard about my story during an industry panel shared by one of the competition judges. 3 weeks after the interview, I got the offer. Market strategy analyst, starting salary $90,000 a year, plus bonuses and equity based on performance. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Claire. I simply sent Grandma Martha a photo, me in a gray suit, standing under the Brenner & Co. logo, holding a name badge that read, Melanie Carter, Market Strategy Analyst. She replied with just 3 words. They were wrong. As I was revising the new development plan for Northlight Studio, my phone rang. It was Claire. We hadn't spoken directly in nearly 6 months. Our recent exchanges had been limited to emojis in the family group chat or vague messages like, busy? Followed by silence. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity won. Her voice came through, smaller and more unfamiliar than I remembered. Are you free tonight? What's going on? I asked, bluntly. Me. I need help. I'm in trouble with my thesis. Claire was majoring in international relations, the same field our parents once hailed as worth investing our entire future in, and now she was coming to me, the one once deemed directionless and unstable. That evening, Claire showed up at my apartment for the first time in nearly 2 years. She wore an old hoodie, carrying her laptop and a messy pile of handwritten notes. No designer bag, no flawless makeup, just a tired, visibly uneasy Claire. My advisor said my thesis lacks analytical depth and has conflicting arguments. If I don't fix it in 2 weeks, I won't be allowed to graduate. I stayed silent, letting her speak, then I nodded gently. Sit down. Let's start with the outline. We worked until nearly 2 a.m. I helped her reorganize the logic in her introduction, corrected misformatted citations, and suggested ways to clarify her argument. The more we worked, the more I saw how much she lacked the basic learning and research skills I had sharpened over years of financial stress and self-reliance. When I handed her a cup of hot tea, Claire took it without looking at me. Melanie, she whispered, why don't you hate me? The question made me pause. I do, I said honestly, but not because of you, because of everything they did that kept us from ever being real sisters. Claire was quiet. Then she looked up, eyes red. I know. I took everything for granted. I thought you were okay. You always figured things out. But tonight, I get it. You weren't okay. You just had no choice. Didn't respond. I just handed her a document I'd prepared, a guide on argumentative writing and a list of credible academic sources. For the next 2 weeks, Claire returned to my place almost every night. We revised paragraph by paragraph, read through sources together, sometimes arguing over definitions, then laughing when we found her professor had misquoted a source. For the first time since we were kids, I felt we were no longer parallel lines. We were just 2 women, same age, equally exhausted, finally learning how to listen to each other. On the night she submitted her thesis, Claire stood at my door, not stepping in, and said, I sent it. I cited you as my primary real-world case. I put your full name, Melanie Carter, founder of Northlight Studio. I blinked. You didn't have to do that. I did, she said, because for the first time, I understand the value of what you've built, and I want others to see it too. Before leaving, she added, next week I'm canceling the credit card they just sent. I want to know what it feels like to earn my own money. I laughed. Careful, earning your own money makes you not want to rely on anyone anymore. Claire shrugged. Maybe that's what I need to learn. That night, I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking. Not everyone born into the role of the chosen one realizes they've been standing on someone else's shoulders. But if they wake up in time, they can still make things right. And Claire, late as she was, chose to wake up, not out of guilt, but because she truly wanted to understand who I am. It wasn't redemption. It was a beginning. On the morning of graduation day, I woke up at 5 a.m., not out of anxiety, but because of a strange feeling. Peace. After 4 relentless years battling finances, dismissal, and loneliness, I had finally reached the finish line. And I wasn't arriving alone. Martha was waiting for me in the kitchen, holding a mug of hot coffee and the embroidered handkerchief she had kept for 30 years. "Don't carry anything heavy with you today," she said, "except your chin held high." I nodded, then hugged her tightly, pouring all my emotions into one silent gesture. Claire picked me up in her car. She wore a navy dress, her hair tied up high, her eyes sparkling with both nerves and pride. In her hands were 2 bouquets, one for me, one for Martha. "I reserved seats for Mom and Dad," Claire said as we got in. I stayed quiet. I hadn't forbidden it, but I hadn't invited them either. The main hall of Bradley West University was elegantly decorated, the school flag waved gently in the breeze, and rows of white chairs stretched out like the finish line of a marathon 10 years long. Graduates crowded the check-in area. I wore a black gown and cap draped with the silk stole Martha had sewn with silver thread. Survivor, strategist, self-made. Claire walked toward the guest section. I saw my parents sitting in the second row, next to aunts, uncles, and cousins. My mother wore a deep red dress, her lipstick perfectly matched. My father was in a gray suit, a blue tie. They looked like they were attending their daughter's award ceremony, but they had no idea who was about to be honored. When the dean stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "each year we choose one graduate who exemplifies resilience, leadership, and innovation. This year, that student is a business strategy major and the founder of Northlight Studio, Melanie Carter." Applause rolled like waves. I stood and walked to the stage under my parents' stunned gaze. My mother blinked repeatedly. My father leaned toward Claire, clearly asking, "Melanie?" I took the mic, stood tall, and drew a deep breath. "I came here 4 years ago with a loan, 2 part-time jobs, and a rejection from my own family," I began. "I had no farewell party, no fancy suitcase, no brand new laptop. But I had something else. The belief of people who didn't have to believe in me." I looked toward the guest section. Marta nodded, eyes glistening. Claire sat beside her, hand in hers. I learned how to do more with less. I worked 16-hour days to stand here. And today I say this, not for revenge, but to prove. What others once called weakness can become strength. The dean returned to the stage, placing his hand on my shoulder. "We are proud to announce a new scholarship, the Melanie Carter Resilience Grant, for students who overcome financial adversity to pursue education. This scholarship is funded by Northlight Studio in partnership with the Alumni Association." Hundreds rose in a standing ovation. I heard my mother's shock, not through her voice, but in the way she clutched her purse strap until her knuckles turned white. After the ceremony, I walked straight to my family. My father gave a stiff smile. "You did amazing. You should have told us." I cut in. "You never asked." And I've learned one thing. Delayed recognition means nothing to someone who's already proven themselves. Claire stepped up, linking arms with me. "We're heading to a party with Melanie's team. I'm going with her." My mother opened her mouth, but I had already turned away. Martha walked between us, her hand naturally slipping into mine, like it had when I was a child. As we stepped out of the university courtyard, I didn't feel relieved. I felt free. For the first time in my life. The summer after graduation, I moved to San Francisco and started my job at Brenner & Co., a market consulting firm I once believed was far out of reach, let alone attainable. I worked in the consumer strategy team, managing brand development projects for small businesses and nonprofits. The office sat on the 19th floor of a glass tower overlooking the bay. Every morning, as I stepped inside, I reminded myself, I didn't get here because someone opened a door. I climbed every step on my own. The Northlight Studio was still running, but I handed off operations to 2 underclassmen I had mentored. They continued expanding the client list, and I supported remotely, keeping the heart of the model alive while honoring the community that gave me my start. I used $15,000 from my first bonus at Brenner to formally launch the Northlight Scholarship Fund for freshmen from low-income backgrounds, with preference given to those balancing work and study. The scholarship offered more than money. It included one-on-one mentorship and a financial survival skills workshop, budgeting, finding part-time work, and reading loan agreements. I didn't want to help students merely survive college. I wanted them to live intentionally, with purpose. The first letter I received from a scholarship recipient brought tears to my eyes. Dear Melanie, I never thought someone would believe I was worth investing in, but because of this scholarship, I won't have to drop out this semester. I won't let you down. I printed that letter and taped it beside my desk. 3 months after graduation, my parents emailed to ask for a meeting. For the first time in years, they didn't call unexpectedly or text through Claire. They wrote a long, formal, and awkward email. Subject line: about the things we never said clearly. They chose a quiet cafe in Oakland. I arrived on time, wearing a white blouse and black slacks, not to make a statement, but to show them. I was no longer the girl waiting to be acknowledged. My mother spoke first. We said a lot of wrong things, Melanie, but the worst was what we never said. None of us ever said, I'm sorry, and you never heard us say, we were wrong. My father looked older. He spoke slowly, each word sliding past his pride. I failed, not because I didn't help you, but because I didn't believe in you, and when you proved me wrong, I was too proud to admit it. I sat in silence. I wasn't there to watch them self-flagellate with guilt. I was there to set boundaries. I don't need your forgiveness, I said calmly. I need your respect, from now on, and for all time. My mother nodded. We're ready to rebuild, from whatever foundation you choose. We started over like polite strangers, learning to speak kindly. No weekly calls, no emotional heart-to-hearts. But there was a seat reserved at the scholarship ceremony, flowers delivered to the office, a message from Claire. Mom just asked how to use LinkedIn to follow your work. That was enough. I didn't ask for more. Every weekend, I still called Martha. Sometimes just to tell her I made lunch instead of ordering out. Sometimes to read her the latest email from a scholarship student. She always replied with the same words. You've gone farther than anyone ever expected, even yourself. I was no longer the girl driven by a need to prove something to the world. I no longer had to strain to be seen. One October morning, I was invited back to Bradley West University to speak at the orientation for incoming freshmen. I stood before an auditorium of nearly 400 people, faces still wide-eyed in their new environment, eyes silently asking, am I good enough? Do I belong here? I began with a story. Not about awards, not about a 6-figure salary, but about the night my father interrupted dinner to say I was a bad investment. The room went quiet. Some faces showed a flicker of recognition. I knew that feeling. I had once sat where they were, clinging to silence like a paper-thin shield against a judgmental world. I looked them straight in the eye. I'm not standing here because I was the top of my class. I'm here because I was once seen as the bottom, and I chose not to believe it. I told them about the 4:30 a.m. shifts, about nights sleeping beside a rumbling mini-fridge in a shared room, about crying not from sadness but from exhaustion so deep it blurred the line between pain and weariness. Then I paused, took a deep breath, and said the most important thing. If anyone ever made you believe you don't belong, remember, that's their limit, not yours. As I left the auditorium, a student ran up to me. He didn't say much, just one sentence. You don't know it, but today you stopped me from giving up. I turned to him, gently placed a hand on his shoulder. No one can take your worth from you, unless you hand it over. I used to think success meant finally being acknowledged, that someday my parents would post a picture of me with a caption like, "So proud of our amazing daughter." But I was wrong. Success doesn't come when others stand up to applaud. It comes when you look back and realize you don't need them anymore. It comes when you do the right thing, even when no one's watching. It comes when you help someone else avoid walking the same lonely road you once did. I don't live to please the ones who underestimated me. I live to honor what I know I deserve. And sometimes being underestimated is life's cruelest gift because it forces you to chart a different map, one not bound by anyone else's route. A path that, bumpy as it may be, leads to the only place that matters: self-recognition. Toward the end of the year, I sat with Claire and Martha at our favorite little bakery. The waitress brought over a cake that read, "Happy first year of the Northlight Scholarship." I smiled, not because of the words, but because of the moment. Claire raised her cup of tea, clinking it lightly against mine. "No one can deny you anymore," she said. I shook my head. I don't need their denial or approval. I just need to know that if I had to do it all over again, I'd still choose exactly this. Martha nodded slowly. "Because you know who you are." I looked out the window. The season had turned. Dry leaves drifted down the sidewalk. And for the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. No more weight of proving, no more craving to be seen, just a young woman, finally grown enough to understand I am who I am, not because someone said so, but because I dared to believe it, long before the world ever did. Melanie's story is a powerful reminder that being underestimated isn't the end, it can be the beginning. In real life, many are doubted by their own families or environments, forced to push forward through scarcity and skepticism. But it's in those very moments that willpower, resilience, and belief in one's own worth lay the foundation for lasting success. You don't need validation to be valuable. You just need the courage to live as who you truly are. What are your thoughts on Melanie's journey? Have you ever been in her shoes? Share your perspective in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.